What's going on, Math 1? This is Mr. Bainey. Our lesson here is 12.1, creating systems of linear equations. Now that we have learned and practiced how to solve linear equations in Module 11, now we're going to start putting these together. Anytime we see a description, a table, or a graph, we can create them and then make sense of them and possibly solve them if we have to. On page 535, your turn. Number 3, one cable television provider has a $60 setup fee and charges $80 per month. Another cable provider has a $160 equipment fee and charges $70 per month. And if you look at the previous page, the direction says determine when the cost of the two different providers, the two different services will cost the same, and then how much that cost will be. So that's our two unknowns, our two variables. Remember that when we have a system, we have an X and a Y, or whatever letters you want to use, and we need to know what those two represent. In this case, our X could be our number of months. Since the direction says when will it cost the same, it's really asking how many months is it going to take for it to cost the same. And then the Y value, or the Y variable, is our cost. So the cost of the first television provider is a $60 setup fee, plus it charges $80 for every month. That's times X. And that's going to be equal to our cost. The other one has a $160 equipment fee, and it's $70 for each month. And that's also equal to its cost. Looks like we're going to want to use substitution here. Since I have y by itself, it's equal to this thing right here. So instead of writing y equals 160 plus 70x, I can put 60 plus 80x here. So that means it's going to be 60 plus 80x equals 160 plus 70x. And then I go through and I solve this, which I'll do very quickly. I'll skip a few steps here. We're going to have 10x is 100, which means x is 10. And that means it is going to take 10 months for the cost to be the same. If I use the value of x, which is 10, plug it into the first equation, or you could do the second one, I get 60 plus 800. All right, y equals 60 plus 8 times 10. And that means that it'll be $860. In 10 months, the first and the second cable provider will cost the same, $860. Try number 4. Go and pause it. The solution will be up in 5 seconds. And here's a solution. It's going to take 3 months for both of these lawn care services to cost the same at $136. The X and Y represents the same thing that it does in the previous problem. Here's my two equations. Substitution was again the method that I used. So I got this equation, went through and solved for X, and then used that to solve for my Y. On page 537, we have a table. Again, we want to do the same thing here. We want to find out when the cost of these two different services, in this case, two different stores, or these two different companies, when they will, or how many of these stones, these P stones, it will take to for it to cost the same for both companies. Okay, so our X is the amount of P stones in cubic yards. That's how it's measured. So that means 1 cubic yard, 2 cubic yards, 3 cubic yards. And this is how much it costs at Yard Depot. This is how much it costs at Lawn and Garden for this many cubic yards of P stone. So in order to create our system of equations, right, just like in the last couple examples, what we could do is find out the rate of change. So what we're really doing is finding out what our slope is times x plus our initial value. Okay, and this means the easiest thing to do might be to put it into slope-intercept form. The amount of P stones are x, the cost is our y. So that means for Yard Depot, when we go up 1 cubic yard, we go up 1, the cost goes up $35. That means 35 divided by 1 would be 35. That's our slope. Initial value means when x is 0. Here x is not 0, but I could use my pattern. I know that it's going to go up 35 bucks here when I add it 1 cubic yard. So what if I take away a cubic yard? That means I'm going to go back $35, and that means this is $40 since I'm subtracting the 35. So our y-intercept is 40. For the lawn and garden company, we do the same exact process. I know this goes up, it goes up 1 P stone cubic yard here. Over here from 45 to 85, that's an increase of $40. That's our slope. And if I go back $40, that means it's $5 for 0 cubic yards of P stone. That's our y-intercept. We're going to solve this the exact same way, so I'm going to speed up the process here. Our solution is that Yard Depot and Lawn Garden will both charge $285 for 7 cubic yards of P stone. That's when they'll cost the same. Then that's how many cubic yards they will both cost the same. That's it. So go ahead and try the number 6 on the next page using a table. And you'll see the solution come up for this in a few seconds. There's a solution for number 6. You see my 2 equations to the right. Now keep in mind that the slopes, I got 20 and 17. It does match up what you see here, but you have to divide it by how many hours are going up. It's dividing by 1, which doesn't do anything. But let's just say if the hours goes up by 2, then you have to do 20 divided by 2 to see how much it goes up every hour. Okay, so just keep that in mind. You're going to see that in some of the practice problems. And the initial value, remember, go back to 0 for our variable. And it says t up here, but that's our x. Our x is hours. Our y is our cost. I go through and I solve it just as I did with the previous few problems. And I get that they will charge the same, 148 bucks, for 7 hours of renting surfboards. And our last one is looking at a graph, so let's just do this one. And it asks us to use the graph to make a linear model of each function, describe the meaning of the terms in the models, and create the linear system and state what the solution represents. So we can already see the solution in this. It's where they intersect. Our solution is the point 764. All right, 7 is our x, and y equals 64. And we can see what this actually represents by looking at our labels of the graph. The X is the number of days, and the Y is our cost of the cabin rental. And because these are two systems, it's very likely these are two different cabin rentals, and they charge different prices. So we're looking at when do they actually charge the same. And this means that both cabins will charge the same, or I shouldn't say charge, but cost. Both cabins will cost $64 for 7 days, or after 7 days. That's our solution. We want to also make our linear model, which is our system or our functions, and we do that by looking at what our slope and our y-intercept is. And again, it looks like we're going to be writing them in the y equals mx plus b form, right? Our slope-intercept form. So it's y equals slope times x equals our y-intercept. So let's do this red one that I have on the graph. That line starts at 15, 0, 15. That's our y-intercept. And it's going to go all the way up to 7, 64, which means it's going from 15, our y value of 15, all the way up to 64. Well, how much does it go from 15 to 64? We subtract 64 minus 15. It's going up, looks like 49. And then, how much is it going over from the 0 to 7, or from here from 0 to 7 days? Well, that's easy to do mentally, but I'm going to write down anyway. That's 7 minus 0, which is 7. So we do rise over run, right, or change in y divided by change in x for our slope, and that gives us a 7. And pretty soon we'll have to talk about what the 7 means. Let's do the other line. Let's do different colors so that we don't confuse them. Y is going to equal something x plus something. It starts at 57 for our y-intercept. I know that goes there. It's going to go up from 57 to 64. Well, 57 to 64, if I subtract backwards, gives me 7. And it does the same thing for the x. It goes from 0, my x equals 0 here, to x equals 7. So subtract backwards, and that means it went over 7 times, which is 1. So our slope there is 1. Now let's talk about what the meaning of the terms are. That's this part of the directions. The meaning of the terms is, what is 7 and 1? 7. I'm going to be a little more clear here. Our slope is 7 and 1. Okay, this means that it goes up $7 per day, and then $1 per day. That's how much the cabin costs, which is a pretty sweet deal. $1 per day. Every day you rent the cabin, you're just paying an extra $1. Every day you rent the other cabin is costing $7. And then the y-intercept, which is 15 and 57, know what these mean, and they are the starting fee. A lot of ways to describe this one. You can call it the starting fee, the initial fee, the registration fee, I don't know, registration cost, sign-up cost. So starting fee of $15 and $57. Okay, so the one that's $57 is the one that's charging only $1 per day, but you're paying a lot at the beginning. You're paying a lot more than the other one. Okay, so that's part of making sense of this situation, this problem. That's all we have to do for this. It is quite a bit, but you already have the solution there. Again, it's just trying to describe what all these numbers mean in this problem. Okay. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you're having a great day and have a great night. Thanks. Bye bye.